Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, we're going to be talking about a recent operation I did where I split a subdirectory out of a monorepo into a separate repo. I'm going to show you the technique I used and why it sucked, and something that I've learned after the fact, actually a different tool that does it much better. But I'll show you the approach that I used using the tool that I knew before, and then the better version. I only wrote the better version for this video, so unfortunately the actual split has the slightly subpar output, but it is what it is. So I've been working with some professors at the University of Michigan on developer advocacy for this Joseki programming language. And this repo is set up as a monorepo, which has, some benefits for them, but I personally don't like monorepos, but that's neither here nor there. But it was identified that there's a particular subdirectory that's been hurting the discoverability of their VS Code extension on the VS Code marketplace. And part of the problem with that is it doesn't have its own repo. And so marketplace displays it in a weird way, or whatever it's called, the VS Code extension place. I don't use VS Code, so I don't know. And it was also hard for people to figure out the issues for it and pull requests and that part. Like monorepos tend to make it more difficult to understand the structure unless you're all working in the same place always, all the time. So it was proposed to split this out of the monorepo. I played around with a tool that I knew beforehand called git filter-branch, which, strongly warns you against using it. And I had used it before, so I sort of knew how it worked and was, I was like, oh, I know I could apply this to this situation and get something working that is good enough. Later, I'll show you how I rewrote this using git filter-repo, which is what I would strongly recommend if you're planning to do something similar because it is much better and much faster. But anyway, I decided I wanted to take a look at rewriting the history, and I knew that I could do it with git filter-branch. Now, in a previous video, I've said that git rebase is like the chainsaw of Git. Like you can very carefully carve something and get something exactly as you want with rebase or git rebase-i. Git filter-branch is like throwing a grenade at your repo and hoping that it turns out in a good state. Like, it is technically possible for you to not mess things up, but it is so easy to end up in a situation where you've broken the history irreparably and just have to start over. So if you're using this tool, make sure to always have a backup, do it in a subdirectory. The scripts that I'm going to show you today actually copy the whole repo over and don't do it in place so that I don't mess anything up. Also because I'm doing it on video, so I already did this in the past. I'm sort of faking that we're a month or so ago when I did this for real. Okay, so let's talk about some of the problems that I ran into in doing this. So if we look at this history, and I'm actually using the archived version of this history, and not only am I using the archived version of this history, I'm using the archived version of the history back in time a little bit, because I actually did the rewrite and then deleted the repo, and so I didn't want the end result to be an empty repo. So I'm starting at this commit, and specifically there is the VS Code extension, jack support VS Code ext jack. This is the sort of new root directory that I want at the end of the day, rather than it being weirdly nested inside this monorepo. And so when I'm done, these files should always all end up at the root. And on the surface, that's a little bit tricky because we not only need to delete all the other history for all the other files, we need to move these files to the root of the repo. And it gets more complicated. This is not the only place in the history where these files have lived. If we do git log star VS Code ext/star, name only one line maybe? And go down the bottom. You can see that they lived at other places. They lived at support/VS Code ext. There's some other place. I think they lived at like jacklang as well. How do I go to the zero? G is 0. Oh, G is the top. Shift G is the bottom. Yeah, and then yeah. So they lived at a different directory. They've moved around in this repository as well, which also makes this more complicated because I sort of want to track the history in this other place as well. I guess I should talk about why do I even want to preserve the history at all. A Git repo is really nice in that you can see exactly why things changed over time, and I wanted to be able to preserve that even though we're moving it out of a repo. And so I sort of want to fake that it always existed at the root of the repo, and the same history progression happened, regardless of the fact that it moved 3 times and lived in a subdirectory. I also wanted to preserve some of the commit messages. So for instance, I guess I have to do first parent to see the merge commits. Yeah, so for instance, this merge commit references pull request 3125 inside the Joseki Labs Joseki repo, but we're actually moving it to a separate repo. So I'd really like to rewrite this pull request reference to reference the correct repo. So I'm gonna have to also modify the commit messages at the same time. Okay, so those are all the goals. That's the plan, is rewrite this history using filter branch. And that's what I actually did. I will show you one of my mistakes, however, in the script that I used to rewrite it. I've modified it a little bit here so that I can output to a separate directory, but other than that, this is basically the same script that was in the repo, and the only thing you're missing is a space and a backslash behind my keyboard. Okay, so what did we do here? What are all the things that are happening here? So I'm starting by copying the repo to a separate place. This is again so I don't mess up the history. There is a warning that causes filter branch to sleep at the beginning of it, telling you, hey, don't use this. You probably don't want to use this. This is how you turn it off. We're going to run filter branch in that copied repo that we did, and then got to explain all the stuff that's going on here. So the first part is this is a little bit weird. Not the first part, but this is the first thing that I was like, what the heck is this? Get filter branch takes, after the -- arguments to select the revisions of history to rewrite. So you can tell it to only run on a particular subset of the history. And the way to tell it what revisions is, I don't care about the actual revision filter, but I do care about a file filter. And so this is the file filter to the revision command, and this is saying everything after this is, or this is saying everything after this is to go to the revision command. So that's why there's this really weird -- I don't think I've ever seen this otherwise. This is probably the first time I've ever done a POSIX long option double empty dash. So that part's pretty weird. This is pretty straightforward. The message filter, this is a command that it's going to run on every single commit message, and this is doing that pull request reference rewrite. So it's taking number with, or octothorpe with numbers after it and changing it to Joseki Lab / Joseki and preserving this. So this is a back reference to this match here. So that part's pretty straightforward. Next, we get to the tree filter. This is a command that it's going to check out that commit, then run this, and then commit whatever contents are in the repository. Note that this is a little bit different from like how most Git commands work. Like most Git commands are gonna only work on things that are already staged or indexed or already in the repo. Filter branch just adds whatever's there. So if you accidentally like wrote a PyC file as a side effect of this, or like introduce some junk files, it's just gonna commit them. And this is just because filter branch kind of sucks, but I don't know, it works. And then inside this script, what I'm doing is I'm basically taking the files that are in these 3 subdirectories and moving them to the root. And I'm deleting every other file in the repo. If we look at that script, it's pretty straightforward. Yeah, so basically find all the files in the repo. I'm using -c because some of the files have spaces in them, or some of the file names have spaces in them, so I have to split in a way that I still preserve the actual file name. So I'm using this. This is actually code from pre-commit. Deleting every file that doesn't have this in its line. Fortunately for me, all of the 3 paths all follow this pattern. I took a little shortcut here instead of doing all 3. I then find the actual file name, the resulting file name, by splitting, ignoring the part before. I create the directories for those new files, and then I move them into place. So delete everything else, move the ones I want into place. And that's the rewrite script. Now, one of the main caveats of Git filter branch is that it's hella slow. It takes forever to run, and I'm only running it on 173 commits here. There's not actually that many commits that I needed to process here, but it takes, I mean, it's not hella slow, and you're only gonna run it once in theory, unless you're iterating this. Well, unless you're iterating on this, which is something that I did repeatedly. So I sat through this screen so many times, but it takes about a minute. And while that's going, we can actually start talking about get filter repo. And one of the main benefits of get filter repo is it's a lot faster. So I actually took this same script and just before recording this video, wrote a version of this that uses get filter repo that's basically the same. Ignore the force here. I needed this because I fudged the history to be back in time. Normally you wouldn't use force on this command. Normally the safeguards that it puts in place are really, really good, but I needed to bypass them specifically for the video. Normally you won't need to do this. And let me add some new lines just to make this a little bit easier to read what's going on while I explain it. And so get filter repo, very similar to get filter branch, but it actually uses a different approach than what get filter branch does. What get filter branch basically does is it's checking out each revision and then performing side effects and then making a commit from them. What get filter repo does is it uses a git internal thing. Well, it's not really internal. I guess nothing's really internal in Git. It uses export and import to basically splat on all the commits, then run over them all at once, and then import all the commits. And so that operation is much faster than actually doing file system operations, checkouts, etc. And so that's how it can be so fast. But out of the box, get filter repo provides a few helpful things to rewrite history. I'm going to be going over a lot of them in another video, but in this one we sort of have just three simple ones. One being path selection. So this is saying only select things in these paths. And path renaming, which allows you to take an input path and an output path. The output path here is empty. This is actually like a special form here where if you have the first path being a directory, you can allow the resulting path to be empty, and that's essentially saying move the contents of this subdirectory into the root of the repo. We do that for all three of the places where this extension existed in the Git repo. And then the last part is commit message replacement. And in this, we're basically doing similar to the other one, although they have a different way of showing their like find regex replace output. I also had to change the regex a little bit here, so I used to look ahead because I wasn't really sure if back references worked. I guess I could have tried it and saw if it worked, but I think back references don't work, so I did it as a look ahead instead. I don't know, it probably works. I didn't bother trying it, but there's also this funky syntax here. Replace message takes a file, but I didn't want to make a file, so I have a pipe here, a process substitution, which makes a socket file, or not a socket file, a pipe file. But anyway, this is the equivalent of that other one, which I think should be done now. Yeah, finally done. Took about 40 seconds to run, which it's not that long, but if I would have rewritten all 3,000 commits in the repo, that would have taken a lot longer. I would have never finished, and I would have never been able to iterate on it. But if we run let's undo all these. If we run the get filter repo version of this, it takes not very long. It's done. Took 2 seconds. So get filter repo, way better. Now I mentioned earlier that I made a mistake, and this mistake is actually very subtle, and it's actually in this revision filter here, which I didn't originally have. Originally I had this running over the entire repo, and it took about an hour or two to complete, and it did actually complete, and it did actually do what I wanted. But there's one problem here, and that this doesn't include merge commits. And so this whole like message filter thing here is actually doing nothing because this was from the first version of this tool that I wrote. And so the merge commits are actually just gone in this repo. So if we do git log one line in jack VS Code filter branch, which is the old deprecated one, you'll see that, oh wait, some of them are here. That's weird. That's super weird. Some of them are here, but most of them are not. Yeah, so some of them got preserved, some of them are not. I don't know why some are there and some are not. Maybe because this has a conflict? Oops. Jack VS Code Does this have a conflict? No, I have no idea. I have no idea why this one's different than the other ones. Beats me. But in the filter-repo log, you can see that, well, filter-repo also preserves all the branches in the repo, so you can see there's a whole bunch of other branches as well. But it actually preserves not just this merge commit, but also many others in here that were silently dropped from filter branch. Don't know why one of them persisted, but I also don't super care. It's a little unfortunate that these are gone, but whatever. Good enough. But yeah, after this, I was able to, basically rewrite the history, split it out into a separate repo, and so now those Jack VS Code, that repo can now be tracked separately and have its own README and have its own issues and get linked properly and blah blah blah, all that other stuff. But anyway, I wanted to show you Git filter branch, and yeah, definitely heed this warning. Git filter repo is slow and annoying. And basically everything that you can do with filter branch, you can do with filter repos. So there's not much reason to use filter branch at the end of the day. Anyway, wanted to show that off and how I got this working and how we made this separate repo. If there are additional things you would like me to explain, leave a comment below or reach out to me on the various platforms. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.